Okay, we are recording, so hooray. It should just be recording this screen, so anything that you see on here is going to be in the video. I think it's picking up my audio, but if it turns out you watch the video and my voice like blows out your speakers, I guess just put it on mute or ask for captions or something like that. Okay, let's talk about what we're going to build. So I want to make an app that's going to combine basically the first half of the course. So we're in week 9 now, actually, right? So we're only going to do weeks up to 6. Plus, I think we're going to do, what was in 7? 7 was local storage and cloud storage, right? So we'll do cloud storage, we'll do local storage, we won't do cloud storage. I know cloud storage has been like a mess sometimes for people, especially if you have performance issues, which seems to be the big thing. And also I think someone mentioned that the latest emulator causes major network errors that causes the cloud stuff to be problematic. So rather than dealing with that now, because I'm sure this box is going to burst on fire from the fact that I'm not only running an emulator, but I'm also recording right now, let's try to keep things basic. We'll just do local storage, but presumably if you have a good enough computer and internet connection, making it into cloud storage shouldn't be too bad. So the app we're making something really, really simple in concept, which is going to be an app that tracks to-dos. Surprise, surprise. So what we're going to have is, we're not going to call them to-dos, we're going to call them chores. The reason we're going to call them chores is because these are going to be things that are going to be potentially regular in a sense. So you might set up, for instance, clean the garage, and clean the garage is not something you do one time and it's over. It's going to be something that potentially, you do every Sunday. So we want to be able to set up this system where you can say, all right, Mike every Sunday has to clean the garage, for example, at whatever time of day. So we're going to need to build a bunch of stuff for this to work. We're going to need to have lists that are going to show us our chores, lists that's going to show us all the people who are there. We're going to want to build a little calendar thing that lets us sift through the days of the month and show what chores are available for that day. We're going to need a database that's going to track all of this stuff, links between the chores and the people who are there. So lots of things that we have to put together. And so without further ado, may as well just get started. But before we code anything, we need all of the stuff that we're going to add into this. So to start off, actually if you go to the repo, you will find that under lecture examples in comprehensive app, I put in a folder called assets. It has 3 little pretty pictures. You can maybe barely make these out when I highlight them. These little icons I want to put in the app. So this little folder here, I'm going to take it, I'm going to go to my project. We're doing lecture 9. I'm going to put assets right here at the root. So that way it shows up over here. Hooray, look, I got my assets. I want these so that I can load any images that I feel like it when I am going to assign an icon to a chore later down the line. Right now this is like basically, dreaming way in the future, but I do want to put these in just so I have them. And we need to make sure that our hub spec actually has the files available to us. And there's an easy way to do that, which is actually just to go to the bottom here, and we can say assets are the assets folder. That way it takes everything from our assets folder and loads it in for us, so when we need to get our assets, they're there. Other things we're going to need, a bunch of dependencies. So back up to dependencies. Here are the things that we need for this. Let me zoom in presentation mode so people can see what I'm doing. Presentation mode. Okay, I don't need the, I'll open the project later. Right now I don't need the phone though. Here are what we're going to need. We're going to need image picker. Image picker is going to be something we're going to use so we can pick from some of those icons that I just showed you. We need SQFlite because we're going to do some database stuff. Path so that we can find the database. We want transparent image. It's going to be for showing some graphics later. And we want to do notifications, so we need Flutter local notifications. Do pub get. All good. Hopefully. Okay. I don't think I needed to do any tinkering around with the Android settings, like multi-deck support or anything like that. If I do notice that I'm getting errors that pertain to having too many functions, that kind of thing, I'll go and fix it. But I think if I remember correctly, I was able to get this whole app running on my computer at home without having to modify any of the Android settings, so it should be fine. And ideally, I shouldn't have to tweak any of this for iOS either. We're trying to run something that should work for both platforms. Okay, pub spec all done. Let's take a look at some of the files we're going to need for this. I'm going to make a few of them, but we're going to build a lot of them later. First off, I want to separate a few of the different components of my work. So first off, I want to have a directory called model, or I guess models, sure. This is going to be where I put in anything that pertains to actual database management. I'm going to have another folder. This one's going to be called chores. Unsurprisingly, it refers to the actual chores I'm going to build. I think that based on the structure of the code I want to make, I probably won't do much of the chore stuff today. If anything, I might just do some setup of the format, like building some of the structures, but I probably won't do a lot of the chore code just yet. I will, however, be definitely doing the persons code. So 3 folders for chores, models, and persons, respectively. There's going to be a bit of overlap between these in the sense that my models are obviously going to need to refer to different parts of the persons, but probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to put stuff in the models directory that will let me model persons and chores, and then these 2 folders are going to have files that will actually, for instance, build lists of them and show me stuff. So, in my main thing, we're going to, unsurprisingly, delete most of this. The title for our app is the Ever So Clever Chorganizer. And we're going to make a Chorganizer homepage. And basically the rest of this can go kaput. I don't need it. Is that right? Yeah. So all this code, get out of here, don't care. So our main function should only have, zoom this over here, should just have run my app, stateless widget, we'll cross this out for now. And we're going to work on, my goal for the end of today is to be able to load in a page that allows us to create people, but the people in our database, and make sure that that all works correctly. If I have some extra time, I can play around with some of the display stuff or building the framework on which I'm going to make all the chores. Okay, if we want to make an app that's going to manage people, we're going to need to have some data types. So under models, I'm going to make a new Dart file. This one's going to be called person, not too surprising. Person.dart is going to have a class for person. And my person is going to have an ID. This is not because I actually want the person to have an ID, but rather because I'm going to be using a database, so I need to make sure I can actually, reference them. And I'm going to have their name. That's it. I'm not going to do anything complicated. Constructor, the usual. This dot thing, this dot thing. I like not having to type anything. I just put in like a couple letters and it auto completes for me. Very convenient. Unsurprisingly as well, we're going to need to be able to convert a map into a person and vice versa. So just like we've seen before, we're going to write functions for each of those things. If I have a map that I want to make a person from the map, so given a map, make a person, their ID is going to be the map's ID. Oops. And their name going to be the map's name. Okay, so as my constructor, I can make a person from a map, and I need to do the other way around. Important note, if you don't type this, weird things will happen, so you do need to indicate that this is going to be a map from string to object of to map. Phone call, but I'm not going to pick that up. Too bad for them. Okay. If this dot ID is null, I don't want to make the mistake of returning a dictionary that has no valid ID, so I'm going to return a dictionary that just has their name. I promise there's a name. Otherwise, I will return a dictionary that has their ID in their name. In older versions of Flutter, you could get away without doing this, but when I was testing out this code the other day, what I noticed was that anytime I tried to interact with the database and I wanted it to automatically give me some kind of ID number, anytime that I tried to take the thing and convert it to a map, it would complain at me and say, oh, the ID doesn't work. So this code is like a little hacky. I don't think too bad, but just to make sure that I don't accidentally try to build dictionary with a value I don't have, I'm going to only return the ID if I know that it exists. So this dot ID and name this dot name. Don't forget the punctuation for a few of these. Ideally, we're never going to have a situation where the person is nameless. Generally, anytime we're going to be building one, we'll be giving them a name as part of the construction of it. For instance, if when we have we're going to open a page, and the page is going to allow us to create a person and put it in the database. When we do that, we can always set a restriction that says if their name is null, refuse to make a person. Like, make sure that they have a name. Last thing to put in here is just a quick override to string, so I can print this person out. String. Actually, I don't think you need to override this, right? It shouldn't exist. And I'm going to return person with an ID number, and their name is name. Just for debugging purposes, it could be handy to have this. Okay, all good and done. Just so that we have some structure to this, I'm actually going to push everything to Git now so that anybody can catch up. Then we'll move on with more. Let's see. My thing is like zoomed in really, really far, more than usual. It shouldn't take that long to get here. I'll just exit the presentation mode. Explorer. Okay, so I'm gonna grab all of this. Actually, we'll grab the lib folder and then put it into little examples. And push that person. Push. Okay, so we got a person now. Zoom. Okay, this is done. We won't have to come back to this file at any point, so we're happy and good with it. What we should do though is make sure that we can build our database. So under models, we're going to make a Dart file called dbutils. This will look basically like every other dbutils we built in this class so far. So the same imports as we had before, asynchronous, because we're doing database work. We're going to import sqflight, and we're going to import path as path. I think when we were doing local storage, it did the exact same thing, so I'm not going to change too much here. Class dbutils. We are going to have a static future init async. And so if we already have a database set up, we want to make sure we're always using that same database. And anytime that we're trying to initialize, we want to return that database. So we're going to open a database. The database has a path, which is going to be path.join. We're going to await get databases path, and we'll call this file choreorganizer.db. So this is where our database is actually going to be stored locally. Then we need to have a onCreate parameter, which is going to actually make our tables. We want to have some tables. So given our database and given the version number, we won't worry too much again about the version number, but we do have to have it as a parameter, so it will sit in here. We'll just say the version, but this is just going to be 1 the whole time to keep it easy. But we want to do db.execute create table people. So we're going to have people. The ID is going to be an integer, and it's the primary key. And the name is going to be some text. Now, in advance of things, I'm actually going to create the table as well for chores. This is again where the version number comes into play. If I was kind of lazy, what I could do is I could just leave this here and say, okay, I'm done. But then later down the line, when I actually want to make my database hold chores as well, I have to actually update the database, modify the version number, and indicate code that says what to do because I'm updating to a newer version of the database. That's a pain in the ass, so I'm not going to do it. Instead, I'm just going to create another table, which is going to store all the stuff I will do when I make chores. So, create table chores. This is going to be a very long line of code, so can I enable word wrap? Is that something I can do here? Does anyone know if there's a place to do that?
Is in the code one?
In the code one? Folding? I mean, it'd be really nice if there was. I think I could space it down, but I feel like it probably will complain to me because I think the query has to be all on the same line or weird stuff will happen. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a way to word wrap here. Probably what I'll do is I'll write this line of code and then I'll just copy it into Slack in case anybody missed it.
But you have to go to File, Settings, Editor, General.
Oh my goodness, okay. File, Settings, Editor, General. Soft wrap these lines, is that what it's referring to? But this would only do it for these files, which doesn't include Dart. You know, it's okay. I'll write the code. I'll dump it into to Slack because it is a very lengthy line of code. Mostly because the chores that we're going to be making as part of this app are going to be like titanic in terms of how many parameters they have. Because here are all the things that chores are going to have. We're going to have an ID integer primary key, not too surprising there. We're going to have a name text, also not too surprising. Okay, we're going to have the person who is assigned to the task, so we're going to call that assigned to. The name here doesn't refer to the name of the person with the task, but rather what is the task. So the name might be something like, clean the garage, and assigned to is going to be a person. However, in the database, I'm going to store it not as a person object. I have to store it as a fundamental data type, so text. The icon is going to be text. Again, this will just be the name of the icon I want to store. Repeat text is going to be whether I want to repeat it weekly, for instance, or something like that. Date text defaulting to null. The reason I have to default this to null is because if I want an extra a chore that repeats every Sunday, I don't actually care about specific dates. I just want every Sunday to have that chore there. So if I don't have a date, it should be null. Otherwise, it will be text. Similarly for time, text null. There might be cases where I don't have a time, just a day. And now here's the fun part is I get to write out every day of the week starting from Sunday and make them all integers. The reason I'm doing this is because if I want something to repeat on Sunday or on Friday or such, I'm going to make the integer 1. And if I want to not have it repeat, I'm going to make it a 0. So here's going to be me typing out the days of the week with the word integer in all caps. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Very exciting, isn't it? End parentheses, quotation, other parentheses, semicolon. And now, all of this is going to go in Slack because it's too hard to show on the screen at the same time. So, lecture, dump. There you go. So that you have it. Okay, wrapping this up, there's one more line of code and then we're actually done with this file. And it turns out the one last line of code that we need here is, where is it? It's going to go, this should be after the file. Oh wait, yeah. I have my uncreate, yeah, it should be right here, here we go. Comma, version 1. Okay, and that's it. So this will build my database, it will create the tables that's gonna have all of the information I plan on storing here. I'm making it static because I don't wanna have to do this every time. I just wanna have one database that has everything. And ideally this should contain all of the data that I care about. So, okay, cool. All well and good. Now, let's move on to, I think probably the next thing I want to do is modeling the person. So I want to write the code that's actually going to take a person and integrate with the database to put in information. Question? What's that?
Do you not have to return the database or?
I am right there.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
There's a good point though, because I made that mistake last time, right? Last time I forgot to return the database and everything exploded, but this time I'm being very clever, making sure I do it right away, so that way I can't possibly forget. Immediately returning this database. There's nothing else I have to do here. I think last time the reason that I did it differently was, or I guess it wasn't a reason, but the way I did it differently last time was I created a DB variable. I made DB equal to awaiting the database path, and then I returned DB at the end. I don't actually need a variable for DB in here, so I'm just gonna return it directly. Okay, so, I got my initialization. Let's make a new file. And the start file is gonna be called person model. So this is going to need a bunch of imports. Importantly, it's gonna need the database stuff that we just wrote, the person stuff we just wrote, a few other things, and what we're gonna basically try to do in here is write in a bunch of functions that will help us interact with our database in the future. So, starting off, we need asynchronous, we need SQF flight, we're gonna need database utils that we just made, and we're going to need person, because we did that too. Great. Okay, and we're going to make a person model. Again, this is not something I plan on visually showing on the screen. This class is just handling database operations, so I don't need to extend a widget or anything like that. We're just going to write a whole bunch of functions in here and use them later. So, we're going to copy a little bit of stuff, maybe to save some time, but all of it's going to be just copying the same functions repeatedly, because there's going to be some similar behavior for each one. So, each one is going to be a future function. The first one, for instance, will be called insert person. It's going to be asynchronous. And the parameters are going to be a database, which could be null, DB, and a person, which could also be null, person. To make my life easier, actually let's write one more line of code and then I can copy paste this like several times. So, or we'll finish this one and then copy it. If the database is null, then I need to build it. So this is in the case that I don't actually have a database just yet. I want to make sure I can get it. Then I should do database equals await db utils dot await, so it will take some time to go before I go any further. dbutils.init, which we just wrote, should return our database. If the tables don't exist already, it should build them, and then give us back a database that we can now play around with. Now, for the sake of debugging, let's make sure that this works. We are inserting person. That's why we wrote the string stuff. And then we're just going to wait for the insertion to go through. So, database, I promised exists, insert. The table we're inserting to is called people. The values we're inserting are going to be taking the person and making them into a map. Again, why we wrote the code from before. And if there is a conflict, then we will just replace. So conflict algorithm dot replace. I can space this one out so people can actually see what I wrote. So give me 1 second to do that. Space. Okay. Yeah. So insert person, I get the database, make sure that it's there. I have a print statement for debugging purposes, so I can make sure it's actually inserting the person and nothing weird happens. And then I don't actually need to take the result of this. The result of insert is probably an integer, I think. Is that right? A future integer. So if I were to actually, if I really wanted to, I could assign this to be a variable, but I don't really need to, so I don't care. But the variable that it would assign 2, if I put something on the equal side of this, is going to be the ID of whatever I just inserted. Turns out I don't need it, so I don't care. But it might be the case that when you're inserting into a database, you might need it. So just as a little comment, returns ID integer of the person, just in case you actually care about doing that. Now, I'm going to copy this 5 times, 4 more times, but we're going to change them all along the way. We'll do one at a time, I guess. So, first one, okay. This one's not going to be called insert person, it's going to be called update person, because I want to update the person. I am updating the person. This stays the same, I don't do anything different. This, I think, also returns the ID integer, where it's update. Is that right? Future integer, yep. I still want to do people. I still want to map the person. I think I don't need this here, potentially. I guess it depends if I have that person or not, so I'll leave it, it should be fine. But I do need to change, we're not going to have a conflict algorithm because now we're updating, so presumably there is something in the database already. Instead, I need a query. So where ID equals question mark, and the arguments for the question mark are the ID. Oh wait, sorry, the person.id. Yes, okay. So just like not a lot different here, I just changed that I'm using the update method instead. It still returns the integer if you need that for some reason, but this time because I can't, I don't have a conflict that I have to worry about, instead I have to make sure I can actually find the correct person. I'm going to match them on the ID, because I know the ID is a unique number. It could be the case that I have 2 different people who have the same name. I want to make sure I can distinguish between the 2 of them. So, okay, I guess this is redundant, right? Because if I'm at the point where I get to where arguments, I've already gone past this line, which means I know that the person is real, so I don't have to have the exclamation mark. Okay, that's update person. Copy again, delete person. Delete person. So this time, I have to be careful. I don't want a person object for this one. I just want the ID. I don't actually need the whole person information because I'm not trying to update the database. I'm just trying to find a single entry and strip it out. I don't need to know their name for that. I just need their ID. So int ID will be fine. Here I'll put deleting person ID. And then I'm going to do delete. Instead of, I don't need this parameter at all actually, because I'm not trying to add anything. I do still have the table, I do still have this query, and this time I don't need person dot, oops, I didn't need to do that. Instead of person ID, I can just put ID. So a little shorter, but basically the same stuff. Does this return the ID integer? Yeah, so this should return once again the thing that you deleted, which you already know, so it's kind of irrelevant at this point. I'll delete this comment because it's meaningless, really. Okay. Some more functions that we'll use later. This one is going to be called get all persons from my database. I don't need an ID for this one because my goal with this function is to literally just grab all the people and then generate a list of people. So this line stays the same as usual. Once again, we'll getting all people. Okay, now we have to do something a little different because we're going to do things not quite the same way. So I'm actually going to delete this. We're doing brand new code for this function. Alright, I want to query my database. I want to assign it to a list of maps. So I'm going to have a final list maps, which is going to be awaiting the query of people. So from query should return a future list of mapping from strings to objects, potentially nullable, which means that this is going to go into my database. Each string should be the name of one of the fields, and the object that it gets back is the actual value, which could be anything. I want to get a list of all of those maps, and from those maps, I'm going to use the function I wrote earlier in the person class to actually build all the objects. So, also a note, the typing below is required, which is list persons equals empty list. If you don't have person here, weird things end up happening later, so make sure to type it. But for, I equals 0, I is less than maps.length, I++, iterate through the maps, and then we're going to take persons, and we're going to add a person from the map, and the map is maps I. Yeah. So now that I have all the dictionaries that I pulled from my database using query, the query here, since it has no other parameters, it just has people, is going to give me the entire table, all the data in it. And from that, I'll have a map that should contain only ID numbers and names of people. And from those, I can use my from map function to create a person and add that person to this list. And once I have this list, I return it. Person. Okay. Last one, and then we can close our person model. Sure, we'll copy the same one again. This one is going to be called get all person names. And it's going to be basically the same thing, but this time I don't actually care about getting the objects, I care about just getting the names of all the people. The reason for doing this is because I want to be able to show all of the names on the screen. When I'm building a list to display all this information, I don't care about the objects, I care about the names from the objects. So you could potentially just run this and then grab names from it, but we'll just write a separate function that's going to specifically grab names. So this is still here. This is going to be a list of strings. This is going to be person names. And we're going to add to person names the, delete this. We're going to add maps I name. Remember that maps is a list of dictionaries, so I need to index by the ith element, and then from that element grab the name that's there. And then this will give me my person names. Probably a good time to put, I imagine. This is the end of person model. So at this point we now have a bunch of handy dandy methods that all work totally perfectly, I promise. And will actually help us integrate with the database once we are at the point where we can actually put people in. But let's pause for a second just so that I can push all this over. So we'll grab our lib folder, paste, replace, let 9 person model. Taking some time getting going, which I think is fine. We're not going to see too much new stuff this class, but it is good to make sure you have practice with what I'm doing today, because it's the kind of thing you're going to do in your app a lot. So you should be very comfortable with it. Okay, I got my people, I can put them in the database. Now I want to make sure I actually can add them. So let's make inside persons a new file. This is going to be called add person. Add person. Okay, add person is going to need material, because we're going to actually show, we're going to have a screen that will pop up a little form that they can add a person. And we're going to have to import person, of course. It should be models / person .dart. Yeah. Looks like the auto recommender for this might have some trouble finding it, so just make sure that you can go package, the name of your package / model / person, because presumably the folder in which you have your add person is gonna be different from here. I think alternatively, it should allow me to do, / this. Yeah, it looks like this is also equally fine. You can do either one, whichever is up to you. Probably this is a little more insecure because if you end up moving add person, you have to update the file path. So I would probably recommend doing it the other way, but it's up to you. Okay, we're making a stateless widget. Actually, we're making a stateless or stateful? Well, we're gonna make a stateless widget that has a stateful widget inside of it. Kind of messy, but you know what? I think it's okay. So stateless, which is going to be called add person page. And the add person page is going to be actually really simple, which is it's going to have a scaffold. My scaffold is going to have an app bar. The app bar title is going to be some text that says add person. And the body of this is going to be an add person form, which is going to say incorrect code, and that's because we're going to make it. So now we're going to do a stateful widget, which is going to be called add person form. And here is we're going to make a actual form for letting someone put in a person. Okay, where to begin? I guess we start off here. So we're gonna need two variables. First off, we need to build a person. So we're gonna have a person. We'll use the default constructor, which will make an empty person, but our goal is to actually give it a name, give it an ID, and put it in the database. I think we can put it in without an ID, it should be okay with that. But I do want to make sure I can build a person from a form. And what I need for a form is a form key. Form key. To make a form key, you need global key with form state type. And importantly, typing required. So I think if you don't put final here, again, weird things can happen later down the line. So just to save myself a headache, make sure to type these. Okay, we're building a form. That's the whole point of this. We're gonna make a form. The form here is going to have the form key. Yeah, form key. And then now we're going to build a pretty looking display that's going to allow them to enter in the name of a person and then give that back to us as an actual person object. So to start off, we're going to have padding, make it look nice. The padding is going to be edge insets. Why is it not like my edge insets? Seems like it's okay. 8. Sure. Padding is then going to have a column inside of it. Column. The column inside of that, I want to align properly. Most of this is hard to kind of probably picture in our heads at the moment, but I do want to just have all this set up so that when I do get the page working, it all looks nice and clean. Inside the column, I'm going to have some children, and one of those is going to be a list tile. And so this is where I want to actually have a spot to put in their name, have a little icon, and allow them to type stuff in. So for my list tile, I have leading, which is going to be the little icon. Icons.assignment is a nice looking one for that. Is there a way to show what this looks like? No, no such luck. That's okay. The on the left. Oh, like right here? Oh, that's so tiny. That's like a clipboard, I guess, right? Something like that. I can barely see it. Okay. It's okay. We'll see it when we actually get this working. Which my goal is to do that in the next 30 to 40 minutes. Title is going to be person name, because we want to give them a name. The subtitle is not going to be text, it's going to be a text form field, and this is where I can actually write in their name. Autofocus, if I remember correctly, allows us to basically make sure that this is going to not have to worry as much about null stuff. So we're gonna say true. And then we're gonna have a validator, because we really don't wanna have an empty name that's gonna lead to a million headaches down the line. We're going to say, given whatever they type in, if they enter something where the value, promises a value is empty, this means that they didn't type anything in the form field and they're trying to submit and make a person, and we say no, it's not okay. So we will return an error message, which in this case is please enter a name. An actual name. We'll be sassy about it. Okay. Otherwise, return null. This means it worked fine. Okay, so that's our validator to make sure that we have a valid name. And then after that, when we save this, we're going to take the value, which is the name that they typed in. We're going to run setState. And in setState, we're going to set the person that's part of this widget to make their name equal to the value. We want to do setState, or why is this angry? I have an extra semicolon. We want to do setState here just to make sure that what we've actually done is going to show up properly, and importantly, it's going to later down the line rebuild the us showing the name on the screen so we can actually see it. Now, the reason we made a column is because in addition to having a spot for them to type in their name, I want to have a button that they can press and submit their name, which will save the name. So inside of my column closes down here. This is the end of the children. So inside right here, I need another child, which will be padding to space it out. Make a sum edge inset dot all. Actually, insets dot only looks nicer. Only from the top, because we don't want to have the button squished up next to the text field, because that looks hideous. So we won't do that. We want to center the button, and the button itself is going to be an elevated button. The text of the button, the child is text, and the button is going to say add person. And when they press the button, this is where our form key comes into play. So we're going to make a form from taking our form key and doing current state, exclamation mark. So now we have the form, which is essentially just the one field. There's not too much else going on in here. But if we had other components, we can all tie them together using the form key. Then validate it. If the form validates correctly, and so note here, validate will return a Boolean. So if there are no errors, this returns true and will run my code. If this returns any errors, it will return false and it won't go and do things that I want it to do. So assuming it validates correctly, I want to save this, form.save, which will then run the code out here to set the person's name to be the value. In addition to saving this, I want to show a snack bar. So this is where we have to put in scaffold messenger so that we can figure out where the snack bar goes. We need the context, show a snack bar. The snack bar is going to be of the snack bar type. It's going to be a long line of code again. I'll probably dump it in the Slack so you can see it. So in our snack bar, I guess we can actually space this one out, right? This isn't one where I have to worry about going a million lines over. So dot show snack bar, and this is going to have a semicolon at the end. The content for this is going to be text person added. So ideally what should happen is we check to make sure they didn't put in an empty name. Assuming they didn't, I save the form. When I save the form, it should show a little snack bar popping up saying, I added the person. Probably this is actually ugly. Let's make it so it just prints out their name. So I can do $brace person.name. Just because I don't want the snack bar to say, person ID, like that's hideous and ugly and bad UI design. So we're just gonna put person name added. And then to wrap things up, my idea is that this is all supposed to be a form on a separate page that they open up when they want to add a person. So I'm only going to, when I finish saving everything, I actually want to pop. So I'm going to do navigator.pop. And in addition to the context, I'm going to return the person. Now at this point, the person just should have a name, they should have an ID, but that's okay because the ID that they're going to get is going to be assigned when I try to insert them into the database. So it's okay if they don't have any number associated with them. I just want to make sure I have a person object that I can work with in the next file I'm going to build. So now is a good time to hit the brakes and push this to get. So what we've done so far, just to quickly summarize, is we built a page that's going to have a little form. The form is going to build us a person. There's just going to be a single text field that's going to show, let us type in the person's name. The name has to be not empty. If it was, our database is going to cry at us and be very angry, and we don't want to upset the database because its feelings matter to me. So rather than worry about that, we have a validator. And when we save it, then we will make a person object with the name that they typed in, and then we will pop that to whichever part of our code created this page. Okay, let's push this to Git. Open in Explorer again. Take my lib folder. Throw this in lecture examples. Place. And in Git, it will have like 9, add person.
You think we'll like get done for now?
Yeah.
For now. Well, maybe we'll do later. Just the routing.
Okay. So, what do we have so far? Right now, if I were to actually open my phone, it still is black because I don't have a body for my main thing. I don't want this to be my main page, and I made this in a completely separate file specifically because I want some part of my app to open this form, create a person, and then get out of there. Which means I need a screen that's actually going to show all this data stuff working. So I think probably the last file I imagine we'll do today, how long is this? Oh yeah, this is the last file I'll do today. Is going to be called, under persons, start file, person list. And you can probably guess what this is going to do. It's going to show a list of all the people in our database. So let's kick this off with a bunch of imports. Our favorite material. We're going to import add person. We're going to import dbutils. Again, this lake is angry at me for doing that, so I need package lec9 models dbutils. And I also need person. And I also need person mob. So we're going to combine everything we've written so far into this is going to be kind of our main page for the moment. In the future we will do other things, but just to make sure that we have the first half of our app working by the end of today, the goal here is to make this page, for the time being, be the home of our app, and it will show off the names of all the people in our database, and we'll also have a friendly little floating action button, I think it's a floating action button? Yeah, which will open the add person form we just created and allow us to modify this by adding people in. So, we're making a stateful widget, it's got information that's going to change very frequently, and we're going to call this person list. So person list needs a title. I guess it doesn't need one, but we'll do it anyway. Final string title. We'll add that to here. Stop title. In our main function, we're going to have this be our home for today, and next class we'll make this just a separate page of our large app. Inside the state for our person list, we want to have a couple things. First, we want to have a list of people. So we're going to have persons. And ideally what we want to do is use our database to populate this list, and then we can just show off the list. Flutter will be very friendly with us if we have a list already that has the objects we want to build, not so much if we have to be doing database stuff in the middle of another function. We also want a person model, because we just built a class that has a whole bunch of methods that we want to call. So our person model is going to be a new person model, just so that we can call all those database functions that we have. Okay, before we get to build, I also want to override init state. Something that you probably want to do very often. Anytime that you need to run extra code when you rebuild the widget tree, rebuild the widget tree, you want to make sure that you're overriding init state, so not only are you calling the super class version of it, but also you can run whatever other code you want. We're going to write a function called reload, and reload is going to be a function that we call from time to time in case we need to refresh our database outside of the normal widget tree building. So when we start everything off, we're always going to rebuild the widget tree, but there might be other times that we want to refresh it anyway without refreshing all of it, our program. So we're going to make a function called reload. It's going to take a boolean of whether or not we want to update the state. Because there will be times that we do want to do set state, and there will be times that we don't. So, with our person model, we need to get all the people, get all persons. We don't have a database at the beginning of this, so we're going to call this with null. And this is going to return to us a list of all the people. And so, then, this is looking a little messy. We're going to do this the function way. And it's going to have a semicolon at the end. Let me space this out before I write any more code. Then, given a value, run some more code. Okay, that should be fine. And the value here is the people that I got from running this code. So because this is an asynchronous function that I'm calling, I want to get the result of this. I don't actually care about keeping the result for more than a little bit. But if I am updating the state, then I want to do a set state, and if I'm not, then I don't. So I'll do set state. Then I want to update my persons to be the persons I just got. So for my reload function, there will be times I just want to do set state, refresh everything, that's okay. There will be other times where I actually just want to go and change the list that's here with the stuff from the database, and I don't want to change everything else in my code. And in that case, over here, after the if statement, else, just update the persons. This is more of an optimization thing. It's something I would expect to see as part of a good project submission, where you don't do set state literally every time that you feel like doing it. You only do it when it's actually really necessary. Sadly, these brackets don't seem to line up very well. Maybe if I space this out like that. Yeah, something like that. I guess technically these should be on the same line. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Alright, I got my reload. My reload will run right when I start everything off. It will get all my people, and it'll make sure that I actually have a list that I can show off. Now, let's build a scaffold. I need an app bar. App bar has a title. Title is going to be the widget's title. Promise there is one. The body is going to be a builder, so this is where it's going to get kind of chunky. So buckle up, I guess. Okay, builder. The builder for this, given the context, to return padding. We're basically just building all of the like the bells and whistles here along the way to make this look nice and pretty when it works. Edge insets only from the top. I'm going to basically just push everything so it's not stuck at the top of the screen. If you've done a lot of Dart coding already, you probably notice that anytime you insert widgets in, they just default to the top left corner and look terrible. So it's usually good to have a little bit of padding to push it down from the top so it's not directly attached to the notification bar on your phone. The child for this is going to be a list view builder. So here is where we're actually going to put in all the stuff from our people. Item builder. We also should remember we're going to need an item count. This is really easy to forget and leads to all kinds of errors. I think I made one in class before, so just double check that you have an item count anytime that you're making a list view. The item count here is if my persons is null, then it's 0 because I have no people. Otherwise, it's persons.length. So that's how many people I should be building, and then for each of those, I have context and index, and then I'm going to return. We'll make this like actually nice and pretty, which is what we'll do is we'll actually have a dismissible. I don't think I've shown this widget before. A dismissible, I guess I'll mouse over it, it should say. Is a widget that can be dismissed. In other words, you can tap on it and slide it, and it should remove it from existence. So in this case, we're going to use the database code to delete something, and we're going to allow the user to look at everything in the list and then slide it, and that should delete it. And if we write the code correctly, we can also make sure that it updates what we're looking at. So, okay, we want a dismissible for each person in our list. The key here refers to the identification number of that person. So what we need here for key, let me space this down, is going to be a key object, which refers to the person's ID. Or sorry, I need to get the person first. So person is var person is persons at the index. Just so I'm not writing person's index a million times. I grab the person, I get their ID, and I convert that to a string. So this should give me a string representation of that person's ID number so that I can figure out where they are. And then on dismissed, when I swipe it away, the parameter for this is the direction that they swipe. Turns out I don't care what direction they really swipe, but just let it there, I need to have it. We're going to do a set state, and in set state we're going to remove the person from our list. So persons dot remove remove add index. So just to pause for a second, take a breather. What we have right now is we're planning to make a list of all the people that we can find in our database. At the beginning of the code, because we have a reload, we're going to be able to populate this list with the information from the database, and it should be filled with person objects. Now that we have person objects, when we actually show off our screen, it should be able to show each of those people, and I want to actually do it in such a form that if I take someone's name and I slide it across the screen, it erases them from the database and from what I'm looking at. So ideally, I need to not only delete them from the persons here, but I also need to update my database model to have them gone from that as well. Which means I need to go to person model, and I need to delete the person. Again, I don't have a database necessarily, so I'm gonna have null here, but I'm going to have the person's ID so that it knows to delete that person. Is this not necessary? Is that why it's angry? No, it's oh, it's the ID as well. Okay, so assuming I swipe it, it should get rid of it. What's it gonna look like? It's gonna be a list tile because we're using a list view. Each tile should have a title which is their name. So it's going to be person dot name. I guarantee there is one. I believe this has to do with yeah, this has to do with setting the height of everything, just so it doesn't squish stuff. I want to actually have some space. And then I believe that the only other thing I'm missing is I want to have a notification to make sure that when I delete it actually worked. So let's use our scaffold snack bar for that as well. So scaffold messenger of context show snack bar. It's basically the same as the other line of code I wrote. Snack bar. Let's space this down so it's less ugly. It's gonna have a semicolon at the end. So context, show snack bar. The snack bar is going to have content, which is going to be the text that says person name. Deleted. Get out of here. So the little snack bar should pop up when you swipe, and it should confirm they actually deleted the person, assuming everything worked correctly. Last couple things I need to get this to go are, first off, I now have a list that should show me all the people. I think this should run, it should just be empty. So let's verify that's the case before I move on any further. Oh, already running, okay. Show me my emulator. Oh, sorry, before, I need to actually build a person list. So I'm gonna take person list, put it in my main function over here. So my home will be a person list. And the title, oh, it's very angry. Why is it angry right now? Oh, probably because I have to import person list. Let's do that. And the title is going to be person list. Go. I can't tell what's happening. Let's see if I can open this. Why are you angry? One or more plugins require a higher Android SDK version. Fix this by adding this to the app thing. Compile version 33. Sure, fine. So this is under Android app build.gradle. Android app build.gradle. Oh, it opened my. Oh wait, is it going? Okay, I don't know what happened there. It was compile SDK version, right? Yeah. Just to be extra safe, we'll say fine. Compile version 33. Go. Okay, so should be okay right now. I mean, nothing should show up because you don't have any people yet. So the last thing we need to do is make sure we can actually add people, and then we should see them pop up on this list. And if we do, then we're done for today. Next class we can do the rest of it. So back under person list. What do I need to add? Inside my scaffold, I want a floating action button. And my floating action button is going to be the nice little plus that will allow me to, let me close the emulator. Should I just squish it, I guess? Sure. Very, very tiny. on a floating action button that when I click it will open the form to allow me to make a new person, and then as soon as it comes back, it should give me the person I can add to my list. So my floating action button is going to have a child, which is going to be the plus icon, icons.add. The tooltip for it will be add person. And when I press the button, what it should do is, we'll write a function called add person that will actually put the person into the database. And then after adding the person, we will run a function that will take the result of our function. So our add person function we're going to write in a little bit is going to be a future that is going to return a person to us after adding into the database, so that way we're not doing everything out of sync, otherwise really awful things will happen to us. So once we put our person in the database, we can take them and then show in the snack bar that we've added a person. So once a person's been added, we can, assume that we actually added a person, because if it didn't work, we don't want to show anything. Then we'll do a scaffold messenger of context, show snack bar, the usual thing. Snack bar. Space all this out so we can read it. Show snack bar. Snack bar. The content will be text that says person name add. Okay. So that should be our floating action button, and now we just need to write a function to add the person, and then that will be it. Now, we're gonna write that outside of, so this is our outside of our build function. We'll have another one called add person. This is a future and it's asynchronous because A, I need to access the database, which is going to take time, and B, once I have accessed the database and gotten the person, I want to return it, but that won't come back immediately. So the person that I want to get is going to come from waiting for us to go to the other page, navigator.push, context, and we're going to use a material page route. Let me space this out so you can read what I'm doing. Dot push, context, material page route. Space that down. And we're going to build, given a context, we're going to use add person. Whoa, I did not mean to do that. Sorry about that. Add person. And make sure I've got everything that I need here. Yeah, add person page with parentheses. Okay, so presuming that this works, this will wait for me to go to the add person page that I make. The add person page will, if everything goes correctly, return to me a person after a while, and then with that person, first off I want to make sure, okay, let's do some sanity checks. If the person isn't null, otherwise it's bad, and the person's name isn't null, this is like extra sanity checking. I think this shouldn't actually happen, but just in case. And the person's name exists and has a length greater than 0. This is like a million times making sure nothing is going to explode here. Then we'll do a set state and add to our the person. This person's being the one that's part of our widget and is going to be the list from which we build everything that we see. And this person being the one that we just got from creating a new person. Okay, we added one to our list that we're going to show on the screen. We also want to update our model to insert a person. There's no database, and there is a person that we're going to put in. And finally, to finish everything off, we want to return a person. if this thing messed up and something weird is going on, we should return null. We don't want to actually accidentally, add some person doesn't exist. So this should end up being null if it doesn't work. That way it doesn't crash everything. This could happen in this scenario where, for instance, you click on the floating action button, you open a page for a new person, then you hit back, and back it should not actually make a person because you didn't make one. Okay. Assuming that nothing exploded here, I should be able to hot restart and everything should work. So let's, moment of truth, right? Wish me luck, I guess.
Because each and everything's different. Dining.
There's the button, click. Alright, we got it. Now let me zoom in a bit. Give me a name, any name. Anybody? Michael, sweet. Very creative. Add a person. Hey, look at that. Person Michael was added. I'm there in the list. Another name, just for fun. Jason. Hey, look at that. Sorry, Jason, you got removed. Look at that, it works though, right? I can start the other way. I think if I start the other way, it doesn't get. Oh, no, yeah, I'm gone. Bye. Bye. I'm out of here. Okay, cool. So, I think this will conclude what we're going to go through today because we're at 6:20. I don't want to start a new thing. Next class, what we're going to do is we're going to take everything we've done here, and this is half of the actual app. We've only done so far setting up our database, making people who can go into it, allowing us to build people, delete them. Next class, we're going to add in chores, assign those chores to people, and then have the option to switch between screens that show us all the chores, all the people, and a calendar of those chores. So. Ideally we'll get all that done next class, but we'll see. So that concludes the recording. I'll push this to the Git, and we'll see you guys on Friday. Recording off.